भाई, तू कैसे क्रैक कर रहा है इतनी डीएसए इंटरव्यूज?
अरे ब्रो सिंपल है, मैंने पूरा डीएस
Second, like the B value or the B key to be precise, then it will give us 2 right here. Because we just removed this one, so it will now give us these 2 properties right here. So yeah. So if you save that, and here you can see it will now give us this symbol right here. So it will give us some value for few, and we can provide like more values if you wanted to. So you can just write like first name, and it will be now equals to Alex, and then the last name will be now set to Amir or something like that. So if you save that, and it will now give us the first name, the last name, and this field right here. So everything is working the way we expect him to work. And that was about symbols in JavaScript. Before getting into the actual content of this course, first of all, we have to ask ourselves is that what is a DOM even mean? So if you ask our good old friend like Google that what is a DOM even mean, so it will give us that definition that DOM simply stands for document object model, like D stand for document, O stand for object, M stand for model. Document object model, you just have to stick that into your mind. But now the question is, what does that even mean? Like, what is the meaning of document, what is the meaning of object and model? So let me just give you a quick definition of that. When a web page is loaded, the browser creates a document object model for the page. So like, let's suppose you visit to some sort of a web page, like, I don't know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. You visit some sort of a web application or web page, so that browser will create a document object model for us. And I'm assuming that you are still supported. Now the question is, what does that even mean? Like, what is the meaning of document, what is the meaning of object and model? So let me just give you a quick definition of that. When a web page is loaded, the browser creates a document object model for the page. So like, let's suppose you visit to some sort of a web page, like, I don't know, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. You visit some sort of a web application or web page, so that browser will create a document object model for us. And I'm assuming that you are still not with me. So let me just give you a quick example in coding about. Alright, so here you can see we have like this HTML code right here. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video is that you already know HTML and CSS. If you don't, so you can check out my 16-hour long course if you want to. Anyway, so let's suppose we have a file. Inside that file we have this coding, like we have body. Inside this body we have h1 with the text of hello, then we have a ul and two li's inside there. So we have 1 and 2 as the levels. So this is our code. We save our file, everything is working the way we expect them to work. We open that file in the browser. I want you to consider this is like a browser. Okay, so we open that file inside our browser, so that browser will convert our coding into a document object model. So it will just create a huge document object, and it will just create object for body, object for h1, for ul, li, if you have section, article, navigation, a footer, a sidebars, all of that stuff. It will just create object for all of that stuff which we have inside our files. Okay, so I want you to just stick that structure in your mind. So whenever we visit to some site, so that browser will convert that web page to something called document object model. So that was just a quick definition of document object model. So now let me just show show you everything in a coding, then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So attached to this video, you will find a link which will bring you to my GitHub repository. So you can either clone my repository or you can download the starter files, and you can also download the finished file as well. So if you just open this folder right here, so we have a few other folders, like we have what is a DOM, accessing the DOM, inner text, content, HTML, class list, getting and setting attributes, sibling style, blah blah blah, and we also have this folder for projects as well. And so I want you to just download this starter folder. Then I'm going to be just right clicking on it, and click on this git bash, and then I'm going to just write code and period. And throughout this course, I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Coder as my coder, and as a web browser, I'm going to be using a Google Chrome. And if you want to use some other web browser or some other coder, so you are totally free to use that. But for me, I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Coder and a Google Chrome as my browser. Okay, so I'm going to just get into it. Let me just zoom in a bit. So starting from the first thing is that what is a DOM? We already learned that. So we have this index.html file and we have this app.js file right here. So inside this index.html file, and we have this app.js file right here. So inside this index.html file, this thing is that let me just coder, Chrome, Studio, and then I'm going to just write then a folder for projects as well. And so I want you to just download this starter folder. Then I'm going to be just right clicking on it and click on this git bash, and then I'm going to just write code and period. And throughout this course, I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Coder as my coder, and as a web browser, I'm going to be using a Google Chrome. And if you want to use some other web browser or some other coder, Chrome, and Studio starter folder. We also content HTML folder, finish file, clone my review tree. So if you just open this folder right here, blah blah, and we also have this folder for projects as well. And so I want you to just download this starter folder. Then I'm going to be just right clicking on it and click on this git bash, and then I'm going to just write code and period. And throughout this course, I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Coder as my coder, and as a web browser, I'm going to be using a Google Chrome. And if you want to use some other web browser or some other coders, so you are totally free to use that. But for me, I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Coder and a Google Chrome as my browser. Okay, so I'm going to just get into it. Let me just zoom in a bit. So starting from the first thing is that what is a DOM? We already learned that. So we have this index.html file. I'm going to be using a Visual Studio Code, and then I'm going to just write code, and as As a web browser, I'm going to be using a Google Chrome, and if you want to use some other web browser or some other coder, so you're totally free to use that. But for me, I'm going to be using a Visual Story Coder and a Google Chrome as my browser. Okay, so I'm going to just get into it. Let me just zoom in a bit. So starting from the first thing is that what is a DOM? We already learned that. So we have this index.html file, and we have this app.js file right here. So inside this index.html file, we just have our basic HTML structure right here, and then inside this body we just have our h1 with the text of hello world, and then we have another h2, we have like hello, not hello, welcome to the DOM section of this course, and then finally we just link our JavaScript to our HTML. So I'm going to just right click on it and open it with a live server. So it will now open this file in a live server. So the next thing which I'm going to do is that I want you to just click on these three dots, and then I want you to just click on or hover over your mouse over to these more tools, and then I want you to just click on these developer tools. Hover over that I want, so it will now do our HTML. So I'm going to just right click on it and open it with a live server. So it will now open this file in a live server. So the next thing which I'm going to do is that I want you to just click on these three dots, and then I want you to just click on or hover over your mouse over to these more tools, and then I want you to just click on these developer tools, or you can also use this shortcut if you want to. And throughout the course I'm going to be using a shortcut. So chances are your will be set to elements. So if it's set to elements, so chances are your will be set to elements. I'm going to be using a shortcut. So chances are your will be set to elements. So if it's set to elements, you just have to click on the console. Okay, so it will just open a console for you. Anyway, so now let me just prove my point about the document. So what do I have to do? I'm gonna just write console.log of document. So if you just write console.log of document, and if you save our file, and here you can see we get a document right here. So if you expand that, and now here you can see we are getting all of that properties and its value, different kind of values. And by the way, if you're not getting all of these properties and its values, so what do you have to do? You just have to write, instead of console.log, you just have to write console.dir for directory or whatever. So if you save a file, so it will now gives us that same result right here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just click on these three dots and like so. So now here you can see, I just proved my point. Like here you can see we have a location property, a URL, and we have countless other. And I will highly encourage you to spend a little bit of your time on this document object, and we are going to be also using this document object throughout this course. So now let's suppose if you want to get your body like you know what, you want to get like a head area, like this head area which we have right here. So you know what, throughout this course, so now let's suppose if you want to get your body like you know what, you want to get like a head area, like this head area which we have right here. So head opening tag and head closing tag. So if you want to get there, so I'm gonna just write, instead of console.dir, I'm gonna write console.log, and I'm gonna comment that first line, and I'm gonna just write period. This document is an object, so we can access our properties and its method which we have inside this document object right here. So I'm going to just write period to access some sort of a property or element. So in this case I'm interested in a head property, so I'm going to just write head. And now if you save that, and now here you can see it will now gives us that head area right here. So we don't have nothing inside that. That's not true. Let's just see, we have a metadata, but it's not showing it. Anyways, you know what, we can also get a title. So I'm going to just duplicate this line of code, and instead of head I'm going to just write title, and if we save that, it will now gives us the title of DOM right here. So we provide a title of DOM in this HTML, so it will gives us that DOM in our console. Okay, so I'm going to just duplicate that, and let me just write a body. Let's suppose we want to get get body. So I'm going to save my file, and now here you can see we have this body. If we expand that, and now here you can see it will now give us all of the properties and its values and different kind of methods related to this body right here. Okay, so we have countless properties and its methods and all of that good stuff. So we have inner HTML of that h1 of hello world, and then we have a new line of then h2 of welcome to the DOM section of this course. And you can also see the inner HTML, I mean like inner text and inner HTML. The input mode is set to empty string, and you can explore all of that in your spare time. Okay, so let's suppose if you want to get like base URI, so you just have to write document.base, not base URI, but you just have to write document.uri. So if you save that, and now here you can see it will now gives us that URL in which we are running our application. So this one right here. Okay, so it will now gives us that. So that was it about definition of a document. Object model. So I'm going to just close this file, close that file as well. And I am going to close that folder, and I'm going to expand this second folder which is accessing the DOM. Close that folder, and I'm going to expand this second folder which is accessing the DOM. Okay, so we have two files, so we have two other folders inside this accessing the DOM folder. We have an exercise one which you're going to be doing that by yourself, and of course I'm going to also give you my solution as well, but I will highly encourage you to solve this exercise by yourself. Now I'm going to expand this one. So we have this index.html file, and then we have our app.js file right here. Okay, so close that one. Okay, we wrote a little bit of code in there. I'm gonna close that one like so. And now let's just get back, and here you can see we have a basic setup of our HTML right here, but we have a little bit of styling right here. So we select our h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, and what we did, we just provide a little bit of border of CCC 1 pixel solid. We provide 10 pixel of padding, and we also give him the max width of 400 pixel, and we also provide a box shadow of 0.5 and blah 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 of CCC. You will see the result just in a second, but in inside the body area, we have our h1 with the label of get elements by tag name. Then we have our h2 with the id of main, and we have a label of get element by id. Then we have h3 with the class of cls, get element by class name. Then we have a h4 with the class of cls1 and also the id of 1, and we have a query selector. Then we have our ul, then we have a label of query selector all and a few allies, and each of these allies will have 1 2 3 4, yeah, just 4. And finally we just add our script area right there. So if you just right click on it and open it with a live server, so it will now open our file in a live server. And now right click on it and open it with a, and finally we just add our script area right there. So if you just right click on it and open it with a live server, so it will now open our file in a live server. And I'm going to be also opening my developer tools. I'm going to stick that to the right like so, and this is how it looks like right now. Okay, so say bye bye to the other one, and now we are going to be working on or accessing our DOM elements. So I want you to just go to your not index.html file but app.js file. I'm going to just zoom in a bit. So if you have previously worked with the CSS, you already know that first of all you have to select something and then you can play around with that. Like let's suppose if you want to select something like I don't know, CSS selector, like some sort of a selector, and then you can just provide a property and a value specifically to that property. Okay, so you already know this. So the same will apply in JavaScript as well. So like, okay, so you all property of a suppose if you know that first of all you have to select something and then you can play around with that. Like let's suppose if you want to select something like I don't know, CSS selector, like some sort of a selector, and then you can just provide a property and a value specifically to that property. Okay, so you already know this. So the same will apply in JavaScript as well. So like the DOM, So we have a few methods to access our elements. So if you want to access something by using JavaScript, so we have a few methods right here. So we have get elements by tag name, get elements by ID, get elements by class name, not get but query selector and query selector all, and you don't have to worry about this one for now. So as the name suggests, that get elements by tag name will allows us to select something by tag name, okay, like HTML element by tag name, and then we have a get elements by ID. So it will allows us to select something or HTML element by using ID. So then we have a get elements by class name. So as the name suggests, that it will allows us to select our HTML element by using a class name. Okay, so in CSS, if you want to select something like maybe by the tag name, so you're going to be first of all writing h1 or h2 or whatever the tag name is. So in my case, I'm going to just stick to that h1, and then you can provide your content inside there. So this is the HTML, this is the CSS tag selector. And now if you want to select something by ID in CSS, so you're going to be first of all writing a pound symbol and then the name of the ID. Okay, so then we have a class selector. So if you want to select something by a class, you're going to be writing a period or dot, whatever you want to call it, and then the class name, and then opening curly brace and closing curly brace, and you don't have to worry about these two for now. So this is a CSS selector, so I'm gonna just remove that from here. I just kind of wanted to show you, if in case if you guys already don't know about that. So that was just kind of a CSS selector. So now if you want to select something by using a JavaScript, so we have a few methods. So now let's just use that. First of all, what do we have to do? I'm just asking you a question. So like, what do we have to do? First of all, if you want to select something, so we are going to be writing our document, because this document is our main object, so we are going to be accessing all of our properties and method from this document. So now if I want to access this method like get elements by tag name, so what do I have to do? I'm going to just write dot or period, whatever you want to call it, and then I'm going to just use the name of that method like get elements by tag name. Okay, and then opening curly brace, not curly brace, but opening parenthesis and closing parenthesis, and inside this parenthesis we just have to specify the element names. So which one we want to select. So if in this case we want to select that h1, so I'm gonna just write h1 in it. Okay, so now let's just log that to the console real quick. So console.log, and like so. So if you save that, and now here you can see it will log uses the collection of that element. So we have 0 value because this is some sort of array, but it's not an actual array, it's a collection. If we have our mouse over to it, so here you can see it will now select that h1 right here, and the length is 1. Now let's suppose if you have see it will now select that h1 right here, and the length is 1. Now let's suppose if you have more than one h1 inside our HTML document, so if you just duplicate that a few times, and now if you save that, and now here you can see inside this collection we are getting all of that h1s right here. So we have 1, 2, and blah 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 through 9, and here you can see the length is 10 right here, and you can also see the inside our web page right here. So I'm going to also get a length. So in some cases you need the length of our HTML selector, so we can just duplicate this line, and we can just write a length property on there. So if you save that, and now here you can see it will now gives us 10, like the length is 10, so we have 10 items starting from the 0 through 10, so it will just gives us 10 values, whatever you want to call it. So it will just gives us 10 values, whatever you want to call it. So that was the first selector about get elements by tag name. I'm going to comment these, and I'm going to hit enter right here just for separation purposes, and I'm going to review. And that was the first selector about get elements by tag name. I'm going to comment these, and I'm going to hit enter right here just for separation purposes, and I'm going to remove all of these h1 except that first line and zoom in a bit. So that was just a first select like get elements by tag name. If you want to select something by a tag name, so you can just specify specify the tag name. It doesn't matter if you provide like h1, h2, h3, 4, ul, span, article, section, aside, header, footer, etc. You just have to provide it inside these double quotes right here. Okay, so it will just select it for you. So that was just it about for first selector. Now the next selector we have is it for you just have for ul, span, article, section, aside, header, footer, etc. You just have to provide it inside these double quotes right here. Okay, so it will just select it for you. So that was just it about for first selector. Now the next selector we have is a get element by id selector. It's a method, but it will allows us to select something by using id. So what do we have to do? I already gave you the answer, so I want you to give me the answer. What do we have to do to access
an old dark, an old darkness. It waves, an old
is this element? Well, first of all, we just have to write document, and then we can access or get element by ID method on there. So what do we have to do in this case? We just have to give them the ID name right here. So what is the ID name? The ID name is main. So I'm gonna just copy there and I'm gonna put it right here, and let's just log that to the console and see what will we get. And now if you save that, and now here you can see we have that h2 with the ID of main right here. So if you click on that, we have different kind of properties and its values for this h2 right here. Okay, so this is our h2. And this is how we can select something by using get element by ID method right here. So if you have another ID, like I don't know, maybe if you want to select this one, so I'm going to just copy this ID and I'm going to paste it right here, and I'm going to just save my file. And here you can, it will now gives that h4 with the ID of 1 and also the class of 1, so like cls1. So here you can see we have a class of cls1. Okay, so this is how we can select something by using ID get element by ID selector. So I'm going to copy this main and I'm going to paste this main right here. It will now give us that main right here. I'm going to comment this line out as well. Let's just start working on our next one, like get elements by class name, and as the name suggests that it will allows us to select our element by using a classes. So first of all, we have to write a document. So then we want to get or get element by class name, kind of a long method right here. But here we have to specify our class name in a quote. So which kind of class we want to select? So we want to select this CLS class. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it right here. So if you save our file, then we have to log that to the console so that we can see everything a bit better. I'm going to zoom out, and this is how it looks like. So we have console.log, then we have our document, and we are accessing this method on this document. Okay, so the value we provide our CLS, and now we want to check if that value is available or not. So if we save our file, and now here you can see it will now gives us that value right here. So we have this h3 with the class of CLS, and now if you have our mouse over to it, it will now select or highlight that in that kind of a orange color right there. Okay, so we are now selecting this one. What if you don't have like that class? If you just provide invalid class, like I don't know, maybe if I just provide apple, and if you save that, it will now gives us nothing because this HTML collection did not found that apple class. So it will now gives us empty collection right here. Okay, so what if we provide this class right here? So like cls1, copy that, and I'm going to paste it right here. So if you save our file, and now here you can see it will now select that h4 with the ID of ID1 and also the class of cls1 right here. Okay, so it will now select this cls1 right there. Anyways, that was just it about for get element by tag name, get element by ID, and get elements by class name. So now what about this query selector and this query selector all? So now let's just discuss that a bit. I'm going to comment in this line out selector and this query selector all. So now let's just discuss that a bit. I'm going to comment this line out and I'm going to start working on our query selector. So query selector is the most used one and my favorite one, selector. So throughout the course you're going to see me using query selector. If you want to use like some other selector, like maybe tag name, id name, blah blah blah, which we already learned, so you can also use that, but for me I'm going to be using this one. And I'm not saying that you don't have to use the other one and you should use this one. I'm just saying like I really like query selector because it allows us to select something or select or elements by using just a css selector. So if you want to select something by query selector, so you just have to write like I don't know, if you want to select like class, so we have to just write period. If you want to select id, so we have to write pound symbol. If you want to select a tag, so we just have to write a tag name. Okay, so I'm going to show you that just in a second. First of all, we have to just write document, then query, and then selector. Okay, so query will be in lowercase, and then this s will be uppercase, and then the rest of them will be in lowercase. Okay, so this is how the syntax will look like. And then we have our opening parentheses and closing parentheses, and inside these parentheses we are going to be writing our strings. So here, if you want to select something by tag name, let's suppose, so you just have to write a tag name like h1 maybe. If you want to select this h1, so we are going to be just writing or h1. And now let's just log that to the console real quick. So console.log. And now if you save our file, and now here you can see it will now select that h1 right here. Okay, so if you want to select something by class, so you just have to write period or dot and then the class name. So what was the class name? The class name was CLS. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it right here. So if you save our file, it will now give us that h3 with the class of the, and I'm going to paste it right here. So if you save our file, it will now gives us that h3 with the class of this CLS. If you don't have some classes, like maybe I just want to write my own name, and if we save our file, it will now give us nil or null, whatever you want to call it. And let's suppose if we do provide this class right here, but we forgot to include that period, and now if you save that, it will still give us that nil class right here. That's because we forgot to include that period right here. Okay, so that was it about how you can select something by tag name and class name. Now let's just learn about ID selectors. So if you want to select this ID, So we are going to be copying this name, paste right here, but first of all we have to provide our pound symbol right there. So we have to specify this pound symbol and then the ID name as just like a CSS selector. And now if we save our file, it will now select that H4 right here. So here you can see we have that ID of 1 on this selector. So yeah, that's that. Anyways, so that was it about query selector, but that's that. Anyways, so yeah, so here you can see selector, and now if we save our file, it will now select that H name as just like a CSS selector. And now if we save our file, it will now select that H4 right here. So here you can see we have that ID of 1 on this selector. So for right as just like a CSS selector. And now if we save our file, it will now select that H4 right here. So here you can see we have that ID of 1 on this selector. So yeah, that's that. Anyways, so that was it about query selector, but it will just gives us one element at a time. So if that selector, like I don't know, let me just show you that real quick. So we have CLS1, CLS2. You know, I'm going to duplicate this line of code a lot of times. And now if you save that, okay, so I'm going to put my CLS right there. So CLS, and now if you save that, it will just select that first one. It will not select all of them. Here you can see we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes right here. So we reuse this class like 6 times, but it will just select the first one, like this H3. It will not select this one, that one, and not any of them, but it will just select the first one. So if you want to select all of them at once, so for that we have another method called query selector and all right here. Okay, so I'm going to comment this line out, and instead I'm going to be just writing like document.query selector all, and now let's just provide or query selector all, like just period and CLS. And by the way, if you want to select something by using a ID, so you just have to provide a pound symbol. If you want to select something by tag name, so you just have to provide a tag name like h1 or span or section or whatever. All of them will work in here as well. Just like a CSS selector, but now in this case we want to select all of that allies, CLS classes. So we just provide CLS I'm going to just write console.log, and if we save our file, it will now select all of these CLS right here. Like, why am I saying CLS? Yeah, CLS is the class. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so it will now select all of their CLS. I'm going to comment this line out. And now let's suppose if you want to, I'm going to remove that. Now let's suppose if you want to select all of these LIs at once, so for that we can use this query selector all as well. I'm going to just write console.log of document dot query selector all. This method inside this query selector all, I'm going to just provide li right here. So if you save that, method inside this query selector all, I'm going to just provide li right here. So if you save that, and it will now select all of these li right here. So we have li 1, 2, 3, 4 right here, and the length is also 4, and we can also provide .length property in this one as well. So it will now give us the length of 4. Anyway, so that was it about a label. bit of query selectors and all of that kind of a good stuff. Okay, we have to provide our quotes in there. What else I wanted to show you? Okay, so if I just write like li right here, and instead of query selector all, if I just remove that all, and if you save that, and here you can see it will now just select the first one right here, like this one. A lot of talking. I'm going to just provide query selector all. I'm going to comment this line out. So now here you can see we are just console logging all the time. We have like console log 1, 2 and blah 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 a lot of times right here. So instead of logging everything to the console, we can also store everything in variables. And I'm assuming that you already have a little bit of knowledge about JavaScript. If you don't have a little bit of knowledge in JavaScript, so you can check out my course or entire playlist. I've got totally entire playlist for you. You can check it out and it's totally for free. So now let's suppose if you want to select something and you want to store the value of that in some sort of a variable, so you can also do that. So let's suppose if I want to select that h1,